What do you think is going to happen if someone gets in a car at your space, they leave intoxicated, and they hit an 18-year-old girl head on, and she unfortunately passes away a mile down the road? It's not going to be the bartender's fault. It's going to be your fault.
We document and share best practices around owning, operating, and managing world-class wedding venues.
All right, Justin, thank you so much for coming on the Venue RX for the second time. Welcome back.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you having me. Hopefully this second go around will be a little bit better and more comfortable for me than the first one.
I can't remember. You said something about cats and rocking chairs. You said something about that over Instagram.
Yeah, nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. That's my, I'm from Georgia, and my grandpa had a bag full of sayings that I and colloquialisms. I think it's hard for me to say words like that, but yeah, I've stole those from him.
I love it. Well, your business, Nuptial, could you share a little bit for anyone who hasn't heard about it, Brent, anyone who hasn't seen your website or listened to our previous podcast? Can you give us just kind of a Spark Notes version of what you guys do?
Yeah, for sure. Basically what we do is help people to think about the things that are what keeps them up at night. So we work in the margins to make sure that essentially those things relating to risk, how their business is put together from a structural standpoint, how they work with other people, things like insurance, contracts, other things like that. We make sure that, that they do everything they possibly can to protect you. So your investment, your employees, whatever that might mean to operate your business.
So you're talking about the most exciting part of our industry, right?
Oh yeah, it's super exciting. It's like, if you could imagine someone, rigging contracts to you all day long, every day. Yeah, that's the type of exciting we deal with every day.
I was waiting for an awesome saying. I was waiting for an awesome Georgia saying. I was trying.
I was reaching there, but I couldn't quite pull it back. So
wait for it. We'll let it kind of load, and then you just, when you think of it, just kind of say it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that even though talking about insurance, talking about risk and things like that maybe aren't the top of people's lists, when you own a venue, it's an asset-heavy business. We're an asset-heavy industry, and you need to protect that asset. I know so many of the venue owners I talk to on the show, on the Venue Owner Series, as well as people in this industry, like, you don't want to lose what you've worked so hard to build. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, to extrapolate on that just a little bit, I think in the business world, particularly for venue owners, and when we talk about risk, that's synonymous with insurance. And, let's try to throw a product at a problem and hopefully it'll work. And that's where we turn the conversation on its head, because I know well enough, if you don't have everything else taken care of the right way, when you throw an ill-fitting product at it, you're not going to get the results that you wanted or you'd hoped for. And, like you said, it's a super, super boring conversation, but it's really, really important for you. And if I can equip somebody with the tools to deal with risk, and I think of it, as kind of like the way I approach this thing is, I'm a big football fan. And so, the way I think of it, I tell people this all the time. If I can help you draw the field, and if I can help you tell the referees what calls they can make, and take down the goalposts and build a wall over the end zone, there's a very low probability that you're going to lose the game and we have to have some perfect product or something like that. So, from my standpoint, that's, if I equip you with the right tools and the knowledge and to understand everything appropriately and kind of what is at hand, things become a lot clearer and, easier for you, and there's flexibility, and that's the most important part, is that we can give you some flexibility, because your business is going to change inevitably. I've been doing this long enough to know that you're going to have somebody ask if they can have a mobile tattoo parlor, or axe throwing, or if they can shoot guns, or if they can swim in the pond, or if they can rent your pontoon boat for a trip on the lake. Those things are going to happen. So what we've got to do is help structure your business to, I guess, predicate those things, and like make sure that there's that flexibility moving forward, that we're not reinventing the wheel to make sure your business is protected appropriately.
So you mentioned product, and then you said flexibility. So when you're talking about a product, you're talking about an insurance policy, or?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to clarify that. And then when you talk about flexibility, so you're saying really that you want to help venue owners not necessarily have to say no all the time.
Correct.
But you want them to make sure that they're covered in the case that pontoon boat, you
run over a kid in the water.
Yeah.
Like the flexibility is a key thing, because, like you said, if you say no to enough people, there are some things that you inevitably have to say no to. Or you have to understand that, there's the risk, what that means to your business and what that risk looks like. And, you may have to accept it. There's nothing that you can really do about it. So, it's just one of those things that, again, we're not talking about super fun stuff and exciting things. Like, you have people on here that are telling people how to grow their business all day long and reach more people and sell more weddings. And that's not what I do, and it's not sexy, but literally the thing that I do allows you to scale your business comfortably. And that's what you're going to get the freedom to not have to worry about. Like, we take the training wheels off, the constraints are gone. Like, if we understand everything, you don't have to stay up there. The problem of what all of this is really is not what keeps you up at night. It's what doesn't keep you up at night that you don't know. And so, that's the other part about this, is just working in this industry for so long and only working with people who own venues. I mean, we know what's at stake and the little things that people don't know about.
Yeah, that's, I'm excited to dive into this deeper and get to some of those things, because I think even across the 5 venues that we manage, the radically different types of exposure to risk that we and our clients have, the owners that we manage the properties for, we try to tell them all the time, hey, we got to think about this, we got to think about that. And it is, to your point, I think sometimes it's the stuff that they don't think, like, oh, that would never happen, that could never happen. But you're regularly hosting hundreds of people on your property, and you're trying to do it as many times a year as possible. And each one of those people and each one of those events that you're having is an exposure point.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So
the, and things that, particularly to your point, little things like a commercial lease seem innocuous. Like, okay, yeah, here are the terms. I have to pay you $17,000 a month to rent this commercial space, and you want a guarantee, basically a baseline of 8% off the top, along with that 17%. Okay, I'm there's a financial risk there. I've already quantified that. I know what the potential is there. But did you look at what you're responsible for on the maintenance of the building? Did you know that it involves snow removal and that was your job, or that you had to take care of the icing outside? Like, I mean, these are things that, you just, when you don't get into the margins and really look at these things, you're not aware that you have to take care of them. And then that could potentially, that omission, or, you not knowing you have to put out rock salt to melt the ice, that could cost you millions of dollars. And so, again, that seems small enough, but it's a risk that you have to understand and have somebody who is an expert to look at those things and make you aware of them.
Yeah. Just, it's funny, you're saying rock salt and snow removal on top of roofs, and here I am in Southern California. This crazy weather that we've had, I'm serious. It's all through June. It was like, it might've been in Seattle,
Really?
Yeah, it's been pretty wild. So I'm going to have to ask you about that. Make sure.
Well, I'm in Northeast Georgia dealing with smoke from Canada right now, which is we're literally having thunderstorms because of smoke from Canada. I never thought anything like that was possible, but yeah, here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, exactly. Justin, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about the contracts. And before we talk about contracts and before we talk about some of the different pieces that as venue owners, as venue operators, we need to be aware of, because right then you were just talking about a contract, for example, that I as a manager or even as a venue business, you were signing with the property owner, right? Let's pivot slightly here and talk to the venue owner or, to the operator who's actually doing and executing the weddings. Where are some common exposures to risk that you see people overlook when it comes to hosting events on their property?
And are you talking, let me clarify, are you talking specifically about like an event planner or the actual venue themselves?
The actual venue.
Okay. Yeah. So, obviously, I think if we have something that is a tool that we provide to all of our clients for reporting. And so it streamlines the reporting process for incidents that happen and that sort of thing. And the only reason I mention that is because it gives us data before things materialize that we can identify patterns. And, if I notice that I'm getting a report from a venue, particularly about a leak in the bathroom or water in the floor or something like that, it's something we can identify beforehand. So I say that to say alcohol is obviously if I had to point back to something that is a big issue, is alcohol service. And for the most part, particularly in the Southeast, which is where kind of obviously we got started and a lot of our clients are based in, that alcohol, they can't actually buy or get an alcohol license. So the compliance side of that, from just making sure your bartenders have the right thing and equipping owners, the disconnect is they don't know what to ask for. So you're a venue owner, you don't know what to ask, what a certificate should look like, or what additional insured form should be on that certificate, or that sort of thing. I mean, that's where we see a lot of problems, just, not proper indemnification and that sort of thing from the bartender standpoint. That's.
Could you drill into that a little bit? So it's not proper because, like, what would make it not proper?
Well, here's the fact of the matter. If you are a venue owner and your client hires a bartender and they serve on your property, any sort of liability that you have from their event insurance, if you require that, stops when they leave the property. So the part of your contract that says your client is going to indemnify you in the event of a loss or promise to put you back to where you were stops when they get in their car and leave. So unless that bartender has exactly what they need with regard to making sure that promise is works, for lack of a better term, when they leave, is the right thing on a certificate. They have to add you as an additional insured, and that's commonplace. But it's just everyone seems to know that, but in practice, that actually happening is a whole nother ball of wax. So what we have to figure out is, okay, we know this is a problem. How do we make sure that there's a certain policy and procedure every time? And just from, an alcohol policy. I mean, just simple things like, making sure vendors are aware of your policies and procedures, and that, you don't have to have a vendor contract with every vendor, but having ones with people who do things like food service, the alcohol, in some instances, the planner or the coordinator, like, if there's $150,000 wedding going on in your space, or a $500,000 wedding, or a $25,000 wedding, if that person is not a professional planner, that is going to reflect negatively on you. So that's an operational risk that you have to account for. So, if you've got cousin Annie who's, ran 3 events, who comes into your space and, oh yeah, we have a professional planner. Well, what does that actually look like? And how are we sure that there is a professional planner so the event is pulled off to our standard?
Justin, you were talking about, the bar, alcohol being kind of a high risk point, and said that the indemnification really ends when the guest leaves, hops in their car and they leave. When you're talking about that, you're saying that the protection that you have from the insurance policy that you've received for the day from the client ends, but does your risk continue?
Yes. So you have a duty of care to everyone at that event. What that duty of care is relative to your response. I mean, it may be 10%, it may be 30%. If you have someone there who's managing the event and it's your space, it's incumbent upon you to make sure that those people don't leave drunk. And yes, I mean, I hear people all the time say, well, it's the bartender's fault. It's not our fault. We've got the right things in our contract. We have an alcohol policy. What do you think is going to happen if someone gets in a car at your space, they leave intoxicated, and they hit an 18-year-old girl head on, and she unfortunately passes away a mile down the road? It's not going to be the bartender's fault. It's going to be your fault. And, I could point to 2 or 3 different cases in different states where it was no fault of the venue, but they didn't have their ducks in a row when it came to the bartender. And so they were left to foot the bill for that. And it, that's just the simple fact of it, is anything that goes on in your space, regardless of whether or not it's actually you doing it, is a reflection of you, and you'll probably bear the brunt of it.
How would someone in that very unfortunate situation, how would someone protect themselves? Like, what would be the things that they could do in their relationship with an outside bartender? Or, let's focus.
Yeah. So in instances like that, what I always recommend, some spaces you can't do it, but if you could have a relationship with half a dozen bartenders and you have a formal relationship with them, not a contract of exclusivity or anything like that, but just something to point to say, okay, you have insurance. If the jurisdiction requires you to be licensed, you're properly licensed. We have a copy of your serve safe, whatever certificate, that sort of thing. And then you have in place some sort of policy and procedure understanding from yourself to them. It's a bartender service provider agreement, or a food and beverage agreement, or whatever. Like, you have something to point to say, here are the particulars of this situation. Here's where things went wrong. Here's our policy surrounding that. And here's how we've chosen to address it. This is where that person didn't address it the right way. the other part about that is, you know, having the right insurance in place. That, you know, if just having the right insurance in place is probably going to do less for you than actually being able to demonstrate that you've already thought about this before it actually happens.
So being proactive versus hoping that, okay.
Yeah, proactive in any situation in a venue, in the venue business is better than anything else. Like if I tell you, I mean, that's really all I could say about that is if you write the story before anything starts, it's hard to argue what the outcome will be.
So it really sounds like venue owners, if someone's a new venue owner listening to this, they should really, you know, it might be a bummer if someone brings flower petals or rice or some of the different things that aren't allowed on the property. That'll require some cleanup for you, and that'll be on the work-wise, but that may not, you know, put you in a really high-risk situation. So maybe in terms of order of operations and priorities, start with these areas of high-risk exposure. You said alcohol. The next thing that I thought, of course, you get alcohol involved is fights and security, right? Have you had any instances of liability where there was a fight that broke out, maybe as a result of, you know, overconsumption of alcohol or whatever, but maybe there was no security there or something like that caused a insurable incident?
Yeah, unfortunately, we did. I was last year, or the year before, that happened. There was not one thing that I would say with high-end venues. It's not, they don't want to see the security, and that's something that we've run across. Is either the security is not really, it's not out there that there's actually security, or that there's no security at all because their ideal client is not really wanting to see security. And I don't, that's kind of a unique thing, but yeah, one venue in particular, a guy had been sober for a couple of years, got into a fight, punched out a window in one of our venues. They have like 8 cottages on property, cut his hand, decided he wanted to play Picasso on the interior of the cabin with his bloody hands. And then left and hit 4 vehicles in his car on the way out of the parking lot. He got arrested about 2 miles down the road. And this, like the owner was totally, again, like called me terrified. You know, I've all these people, we've got a, you know, $150,000 wedding going on, and this happens. And so, fortunately, that's one of those situations where, you know, obviously the punching out the windows and stuff like that, you know, from a property damage standpoint, we're all good there. When somebody damages something on their vehicle on the way out, their auto insurance is it's going to be primary. So, you know, they took care of that, and, you know, it's that kind of stuff. And in even the most, you know, unlikely venues, it happens. And, you know, people tripping and falling. I mean, that's one of those things. But as a venue owner, the trips and falls aren't your biggest concern. I know that's kind of an odd thing to say, but you're not worried about the trip and fall. You're worried about the promise that your client has in your contract to make you whole in the event that something happens. And that's what we see time and time again, that going back to that word indemnification, that promise is just, it's not, A, it's not funded properly, B, it's not structured the right way, and C, the compliance to make sure it happens every time is totally not there. It's a big problem.
So could we break that down? You said it's not properly structured, funded, or, you know, there's no kind of rules around how it's going to be implemented. Can you, so what is this indemnification policy that you just read?
Yeah. So I talk about this all the time, by the way, and people probably get sick of hearing it from me. But anyway, that word could very simply be explained as a promise. And that's a promise to do what? A promise to pay your attorney's fees, to take care of anyone that might be injured. There is a litany of things in your contract that promise is for. So,
and it's the promise between the couple who's renting the venue,
correct,
and you, the venue owner, etc.
Exactly. So what they're promising to do is to make you whole in the event that anything goes wrong. So if you think of it from a practical sense, they're basically giving you a blank check. And I think when people think, particularly venue owners think about event insurance, it's just like, well, why don't we need that? Well, I've heard podcasts, and in particularly, I know you're on a podcast with Miles at Event Helper recently, or maybe in the last 6 months or so.
Yep.
And, I hear a lot, well, you want that to make sure that it takes care of anybody that gets hurt or from alcohol or anything like that. Just to be frank, and this sounds bad, but you don't care about that as a venue owner. What you care about is that promise from the client to you is funded, number one, and is not something that they are promising you that they can do without any real means of doing that. And then the other thing is that it's funded in a way that policy will always pay first. And there are some other prohibitions that are understood in the contract that protect you. So, and if you want to go through and have me explain some of those, I'll be happy to. I don't want to bore people with more of this exciting insurance talk, but
no, but this is the meat of it. I'm curious. So this indemnification, what do people care about as part of it? What are some of those additional things?
Yeah, exactly. So you want to make sure that the policy in all instances is primary. Your commercial policy will say this policy is primary, except in the event that another policy says it's primary. The event insurance that your clients get will say this policy is primary, except in the instance that any other policy is primary. So what you're going to have is two policies that are saying that they're primary, and they really aren't. So what we have to do is not leave that up to an attorney or somebody to interpret. That has to be in your contract. So getting that into your contract in the right way in that indemnification part is a big part of this. The other thing is the ability for you to have to contribute to a payment of a claim. That's the other part of this. We have to dictate that they can't ask you to contribute to a claim. So that's a big part of it. And then the other thing is, in the event that policy pays whatever or policy limit, their insurance company can't then come back and sue you or your business. So there are some very, very important stipulations there that venue owners just don't know that they can ask for. And it's a really big protection for you, your business, and then, depending on how it's structured, maybe the property owner of the venue as well, which is probably you.
Yeah. Well, and now that you're saying that, I'm realizing, gosh, we need to go back and look at our contracts to make sure that it says that the insurance that's provided by the couple will be seen as primary, because you're 100% right. Most of the policies are saying they're primary, and you think, oh, we're covered, but if it's not specifically spelled out. When you're talking,
let me tell you a little story real quick about it. And I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
But let's talk about, and I don't think I told this story last time, but I tell it all the time. So it's inevitable that I might have. One of our first 6, 7, 8 years ago, one of our very first clients that we started working with had an issue where it was a winery, and that's kind of where we started. A dry wedding at a winery. I mean, the silliest thing you've ever heard. But they provide 2 bottles of wine to the bridal suite, complimentary. They were aware of, they had liquor liability. They were aware of, unsupervised alcohol, all of that stuff. I mean, we had that taken care of. What they didn't realize is that one person, I guess, drank all the wine. I mean, not all, but like a lot of it. And she fell down the spiral staircase, cut her face, like hit the post with her face, cut her lip, had, 8, 10, 12 stitches, broke some of her teeth, and these were expensive teeth that she had, if you can understand. And so our owner got a letter from that bridesmaid's dad's attorney 2 weeks later that they were responsible for it, yada, 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 all this stuff. Well, she calls me and says, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, well, they have event insurance. Their event insurance is primary. So I know this seems like a weird concept, but that bridesmaid has to sue her friend first, and not necessarily her friend's insurance company, but that's what's going to have to happen. There's no other way, because that policy has to be primary. So we get back to the whole situation of, do I really want to do that to my friend? And that is just a mental hurdle that most people can't climb over. So that whole incident vaporized. Never heard anything from the lady again. So those are little things with regard, like it cost our partner no more money to institute that. And the hard part was, from a practical sense, making sure 100% of the time there's compliance on these requirements. Because first off, we just kind of let people go wherever and get whatever they wanted from an insurance standpoint. Like, as long as it has these conditions, it's totally fine. That created a huge issue because no one knew what to get, what to ask for, who to go to. And so that's the other part, is you have to find a method of making sure that compliance is taken care of 100% of the time. Because if you don't, inevitably the time it's not taken care of is the time that's going to hurt you.
Yeah. That's a wild story. I'm curious. I just want to make sure I got that all correctly. So they would have to, in the case, so the lawyer sends the letter, the venue owner is like, oh crap, what do we do? What is the response? The response back to that letter is, hey, the client who rented the facility had insurance that was primary, so please contact this insurance information that you had received.
Well, the response was from, basically our client just filed a claim. She just reached out to the event insurance carrier and filed a claim on their behalf because they're listed as additional insured. They have all the same rights as the actual policy owner. They just filed a claim, and then the adjuster has to tell her attorney that, hey, we're the person who has to deal with this now. Like you're going to have to. Yeah.
Oh, got it. The adjuster for that insurance policy that the couple pulled. Oh, got it.
Yeah. So they totally put the ball back in the other person's court. Like, I mean, it's just a pretty quick, and now it's even more so because, with the way we have these procedures we have for incident reporting, that incident report's completed, then we have a conversation if it rises to the level of, hey, do we need to get somebody involved? And it's a quick, shoot that out to the carrier, just forward that email from the incident report they completed, the photos, the report itself, all that, and they don't really have to do anything. So it's, again, having your own internal processes and procedures when something like that happens is, that's going to save you another headache.
That's wild. That is so wild. And I think any venue owner right now listening, you're probably wondering, oh gosh, like, do I have that in my contract? it's definitely a time to fire up, the contract that you have clients signing. Reach out to Justin at Nuptial. Justin, I have a question though. Let's say you have a venue owner who just found the show. They just listened to this. They haven't heard a review before or the show. They hear this episode and they're like, I've got 80 weddings that have already signed contracts. And I go and look at my indemnification clause and I find, as a venue, I don't have that correct, clause or that correct verb in the indemnification section. If I don't have that correct indemnification section listed out, what do I do? And I already have signed weddings.
Yeah, I think the best thing that you can do is get it. Number one, get somebody who you can get it right very, very quickly. Don't book another wedding until it's an easy process. It's not scientific. Like, you can correct that. The other thing I would say is get it correct and then go back to your clients. If you're not requiring, event insurance and you aren't doing some of these other things that you should do the right way, go find somebody who is doing it the right way and ask them to be a partner, and then just kind of to clean that up. To be honest, when we onboard a new client, there are about 30 to 40% of their clients who haven't done anything at all in terms of what they've asked for them. And so it's a very easy handoff to say, hey, we partnered with Justin and his team, whatever, and they can help you to take care of this. And even though you don't require it, you can get the right things in place. So you can make that indemnification happen without requiring it in the contract per se. So that's something I would say, as a takeaway, you can do that, and maybe you can get what our general uptake is 30 or 40% of people, because we help make it really, really easy for them and automate everything, are going to do it anyway, just because it takes 2.5 minutes to make sure that happens. So
when you're saying people, you're not talking about venue owners, you're talking about the client.
Their clients.
Couples, right. So what you're talking about doing is going back to your couples. Let's say in my situation with the venue owner who has the hypothetical 80 weddings booked that doesn't have proper indemnification, would you go in, say you're using HoneyBook or something like that, would you just create another policy or an add-on, an additional thing, or tell them that they need to sign a completely new policy? Or do you just send an email? Like,
there's generally, once they've signed a contract, you're kind of stuck. So the only thing that you can do is, from an indemnification standpoint, you can facilitate that. So, and I'm using us as a situation because I don't have anybody else to work with. But what I'm saying is, we just have to realize that, hey, these are the folks on the books right now, and there's really maybe nothing that we can do from a contractual standpoint to obligate them to do this. But if we help them with the method of indemnification, like basically just the event insurance part, if we can facilitate that for them and get them to the point where it's fixed, even though it isn't necessarily required. Does that make sense?
I get what you're saying. So you're saying, instead of, most of the time, even, a month out, 2-3 months out, the weddings don't have the insurance anyway, even if it wasn't the contract. So you're just going back, you don't have to change the contract, but just make sure and say, hey, we've got, Justin as a partner, or we have whoever it is, right? Hopefully it's you, hey, we've got this in place. We're just going to make sure that you've got the correct insurance for the day of, and then make sure in all practicality that it is the primary, that it is that you are covered for those, in my example, 80 weddings that you have on the books. Understood. Okay. And then make sure moving forward, you're good with that.
Exactly. So we can try to clean up as much as we possibly can, and the ones on the books. And that's what we do in most cases. And we find, because the we make it really easy. They just do it anyway. So we actually facilitate that indemnification or that promise, even though they're not required to do it. So it's just one of those things that, you know, a lot of people provide you a link or whatever, like, hey, here's a link, have your people go and, you know, buy this event insurance or all that. And that's where we find it just does not work. If it's not automated and there's not a process and a workflow and a follow-up and a this and a that, you won't have compliance. So we get people in that workflow, and even though they aren't required, a lot of times they just end up doing it anyway because they don't have an easier option.
Got it. And so they're getting, through their easiest option, they're getting what you as the venue owner need. Makes total sense. Makes total sense. Gosh, that's really good. I wanted to kind of wrap today asking about other points of exposure that you see, because obviously we spent some time talking about alcohol. We talked a little bit about fights. Are there, and I know you mentioned bodies of water, you know, like a pontoon boat and things like that. Are there other areas that you're commonly seeing, you know, come up for venue owners?
You know, I think, you know, it's a great thing for you to have an exclusive relationship with a vendor, you know, particularly a caterer. You know, that person is not in-house, but they're as close to being in-house as they can be. But that is a big operational hazard for you. Well, what happened if your exclusive caterer can't pull off an event? And in today's environment of employment, having people, it's and the other thing is having quality people. And what we've seen, number one, from just the risk of, you know, the food service not being what it should, and that seems small, but again, that's a reflection of you. And I was talking to somebody yesterday. Getting people to work's a big deal, and just to be honest, like people who work in the event insurance, or excuse me, the event space, are, you know, the penchant for harassment is there. And I know that this is a weird conversation to have and thing to say, but I see it. Like it's, you know, a caterer brings in some temps, and they aren't number one aware of your policies and procedures or how an event usually goes, or they say something to your in-house bartender or somebody else that works for you, and they don't feel like the environment is safe for them to work in. That's a whole nother HR issue that hasn't, you know, another big issue. I never see a staff handbook or a staff manual or anything like that. And the penchant for you to have an issue with a staff member for whatever reason and terminate them or this, that, and the other, like that's a pretty high thing. And it's something right now with employment law that's another, you know, you're worried about people getting hurt or people drinking too much. You're not worried about, you know, the flip staff or whomever that might be, or, you know, that's something I see that's totally unaddressed a lot of times. You know, and just other things like, I mean, well, you mentioned like weird hazards. I mean, just, you know, not getting a certificate from a caterer. And in the 8 years I've been in this business, I've never had an issue with somebody have people get sick. It's never happened. And it happened twice in December. And so that's, I mean, you just, like, when you don't think things like that can happen, but, you know, people don't obey your rules. They don't use a professional caterer, and they don't send you the requirements that, and stuff like that happens. So, and it's just a mixed bag for sure.
Yeah. For the employment side of it, do you see that, because I mean, I understand if someone is a employee of yours or even a contractor of yours in different states, depending on the state you're in, California's not super happy with contractors, you know,
yeah.
years. But other states may or may not be cool with it. But outside of that, like if you have direct employees and they are, harassing catering staff or,
getting harassed. I mean, that's what we see.
Okay. So vice versa. So yeah, all of a sudden, what's the liability for the venue owner? Is the liability there because they failed to prevent a situation that they create a safe work environment? Is that?
That's exactly right. And, if you can't demonstrate to EEOC or whomever that might be that you've created a safe working environment for them, or you haven't done something to stop whatever is, I mean, there's a, that type of thing is, or, just terminating somebody. If you don't have the proper documentation in place, and the policy and procedures not followed for termination. And again, this seems trivial, but when you have a sales staff at your venue of 5 or 6 people, and that type of thing can happen in a hurry.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm definitely going to go back and look at our contracts. I know every time we talk to lawyers on this show, we talk to anyone to do with risk or insurance, like you guys are in, it's always, it's kind of the scary side of the business for sure. Because you don't want to have everything that you worked for, be at the mercy of,
Well, exactly. And I'm not an attorney. I mean, I won't, I'm not an accountant, but from the operational and the legal side of this, I stayed at a Holiday Inn. I've seen enough to know, and I've facilitated enough conversations, and that's really what my job is like, where do you want to end up, and how do I facilitate that conversation with the professional that you work with? And the reason being, your attorney, we work with people, and I get this all the time. Well, we already have an attorney, we already have an accountant, we already have an insurance guy, and they're good. I totally understand that. That's something that I would expect because you have a successful business. The problem is you don't work with somebody in any of those spaces who work with somebody just like you all day, every day. And that is the reason why we do the insurance stuff. I mean, that's, we do a great job of it, and I won't shy away from it solely because that's what we do all day, every day. And in some cases, it doesn't make sense. And we're happy to go back to your professional, and we charge a fee to do that. And, it all works out. But in that way, I can be objective. And it doesn't matter to me. I just want to help you. And from my standpoint, you're very servant-minded. That's the way I am personally. And, I just want to make sure that you don't lose your house. If your house is on premises, you don't lose your business. You don't lose a huge source of income for you. And we kind of parse out the things that could do that and then put it back together in a way that prevents it from happening.
Cool. Awesome. Justin, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, talking about these very important topics. If people want to get a hold of you, they want to check out your website, especially for those folks who are listening on audio today, where should they be going?
Yeah. Nuptialrisk.com is the website. NUPTIALRISK.com. I know that's spelling that. It's always a challenge. And then at Nuptial Risk on social media, obviously in various channels. But yeah, that's the way you can get in touch with us. And, I love having conversations, and that's kind of what we do, is just talk to people and see, hey, does it make sense?
Yeah, totally. Does it make sense? Is there a way that you can protect them and even maybe, get them out of a situation where they have some exposure coming up with some previous booked events that don't have the appropriate insurance?
Sure.
So it's out, and just to get a really clear understanding too, you kind of do both the risk evaluation part for folks, as well as you can provide?
Yeah, so we work in a consulting capacity, and then we also, if it makes sense, we also serve as your broker or can, and that's the in the way that I'm a little bit different is, and just a real quick, you don't have to I don't have to sell you a product for you to work with us. It's not like that. That's not what I'm here to do is push a product on you or anything like that. It's, I think it's disarming and it's refreshing when people realize, hey, we can work with Justin and talk to him really about what we're concerned about. And he's not going to be the guy that is just like, oh, well, you need this. And so that's where it's a little different. I'm not there to step on your folks' toes. I'm there to work hand in hand with them to get you where you need to be.
Fair. Love it. Awesome. Justin, I appreciate you coming on today. It's been a pleasure having you again on the show. And this is, I think, such a needed topic. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us, and hoping people reach out to you and just have really good contracts and have really good indemnity policies and have good insurance stuff that's going to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate the opportunity as always. And as always, enjoyed it. I'll come with some more stay-ins maybe next time.
Oh, good. I'm going to count on it. I'm counting on it.